The Earth may be getting warmer, but we're getting cooler. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for episode 231 of Plain English. Like always, the website includes a full transcript of the program, plus our video lessons, translations, and so much more. That's all at plainenglish.com/231 today, plainenglish.com/231. Coming up today, for 150 years, the conventional wisdom has been that the normal human body temperature is 98.6 degrees. But new research suggests that the new normal is more than a degree cooler. The phrasal verb today is average out, and we have a song of the week. It's a number that's seared into the minds of people everywhere, or at least in the countries that use Fahrenheit. 98.6 degrees. That's the normal human body temperature. It's the reference point against which a patient's fever is measured. It's almost a ritual for children to cross their fingers with the thermometer under their tongues and hope for a number as high as possible above 98.6 when they don't want to go to school. But new research suggests that the normal human body temperature is closer to 97.5 degrees, and it's not exactly clear why. For those of you more accustomed to Celsius, and that would be most of you, 98.6 degrees is, of course, 37 degrees Celsius. The new normal, the lower normal, is 36.4 degrees. Regardless of which system you use, the new readings are a bit puzzling. There are two possibilities for this variance. Either previous studies were flawed in some way, or humans are getting cooler. Let's take a look back in time. How did the number 98.6 take hold anyway? About 150 years ago, a German physician analyzed 1 million temperature readings from 25,000 people and decided that the normal body temperature was 98.6 degrees. The number was widely publicized and taught, and has been accepted as the normal or correct body temperature. Is it possible that this number was never accurate in the first place? When I see numbers like this diverge over time, I always wonder about the way the figures were measured. It's one thing to say that body temperatures have changed, but if it's not measured the same way, then the difference could be more about the way it's measured than the actual target of the measurement. Over time, of course, our instruments have gotten better. I went to the doctor a few years ago, and they took my temperature in no more than 3 seconds with a digital thermometer in my ear. That's a lot different than when I was a kid when I had to hold a thermometer under my tongue and, this was the hard part, sit still for a minute or two. The nurses then read it manually from the mercury. So the instrumentation has changed over the years. There are also multiple techniques for measuring body temperature. You can measure body temperature in 4 places: in your ear, under your tongue, in your armpit, which I didn't know until today, and of course, the other place. So each one gives slightly different results, even for the same person at the same time. So is it possible that the study 150 years ago used primarily one method, whereas today we use a different method? Now, in addition, there are many factors that influence a person's body temperature. It's funny that we say that for the whole human race, there is one normal body temperature, but your age, physical activity, even the time of day can influence body temperature readings. How do we know that the measurements, either the ones today or the ones long ago, how do we know that they aren't biased toward a measurement that's typically higher or lower? Well, those were my questions when I first heard the news that body temperature has gone down, but a new study addresses some of these doubts. The authors of the study looked at large body temperature databases collected over 157 years. If there were a design flaw or bias in the first study, then you would expect that to be averaged out over many different data sets collected by different scientists over a long period of time. Ideally, we'd have full details on the instruments, methodology, and demographics of the patients over long periods of time. That would allow a statistician to isolate the many factors that influence body temperature. Well, here in the real world, that's not available. But still, a trend in the data emerges, which is that body temperature has consistently gone down over the last century and a half. What could that mean? The body temperature of any animal is roughly correlated with its metabolism. It could mean that our metabolism has slowed down. A higher body temperature is often a response to inflammation somewhere in your system. People today are healthier and have less inflammation, which could also affect body temperature. This would have been good to know on those borderline days. You know the borderline days. Your fever was 99.5. Parents said, "You have to go to school. It's just 1 degree." I could have used this study saying that, in fact, it's 2 degrees above normal, and I clearly was in no shape to go to school. I have a quick favor to ask you all, if you don't mind. Would you take 5 minutes to fill out a listener survey? JR and I are planning some big improvements to the website and user experience that we'd like to roll out over the next few months. But before we do so, we want to know what's on your mind as listeners. If you have a few minutes, go to plainenglish.com/survey, SURVEY, and answer a few questions for us. It's not long, and it's good practice for you in English. plainenglish.com/survey. Today's expression is a phrasal verb, to average out. This is a unique one, and you use it when you're talking about data, numbers, things like that. And typically, it's when you're talking about data that has a lot of variation or a lot of noise, but nevertheless, you can still draw some conclusions about it. Here's how you heard it earlier. We were talking about the body temperature measurements, specifically the one study that established 98.6 as the normal body temperature. And I was wondering, did that study have some type of bias? For example, was it taken of only sick people? Or is it possible that the instrumentation wasn't calibrated properly? Whatever, is there some reason not to trust that conclusion? That was my question. The study that came out looked at several recent data sets from different sources over a longer period of time. So you would expect that the variations of one individual doctor's instruments or the bias of one study would average out over time over the much larger data set. What I mean here is that when you have really large amounts of data, you can accept a little bit of imperfection in any one given part of the data set. Now, obviously, you prefer perfect data, but if there were some flaw in some part of the data, it would probably average out over a lot of different observations. It wouldn't be the end of the world. We use average out by saying that an error or an outlier or a data set with a lot of variations averages out. That means, okay, maybe one study is biased and gives readings that are too high, but maybe another one is too low. A couple of those in a huge data set, and it will average out. The important thing is that there's no bias one way or another over the whole data set that you have. Let me give you another example. In this example, it simply means that we're calculating the average over numbers that are variable. They're very different. It's a new year, so I always look back on my spending from the previous year in different categories. So I looked back at my gas bill from 2019, and I mean natural gas at home. In my apartment, I use natural gas for the hot water heater, the stove and oven, and most importantly, for my furnace. Chicago, where I live, is cold in the winter and hot in the summer. So there's a lot of variation in the amount of gas that I use. The lowest month last year was June and July, which were both $48. That was my gas bill last June and July, $48. The highest month was last February, and that was $88. And the other months were scattered between these two extremes. But my gas bill averaged out to $60 per month. We say average out because there's a lot of variation. The highest month was almost double the lowest month. Not quite, but almost double, $48 to $88. So there's a lot of variation, but it averages out to $60 per month. I think we say average out to almost say that if you ignore the variations, here's what it is. How much TV do you watch a day? For me, there are a lot of days where I don't turn the TV on a single time. Actually, today is one of those days. The TV has not gone on, and it won't. 0 today. I have other days where I watch a football game in the afternoon and a movie at night. That can be 5 hours. I don't have a lot of those days, but I do have them. I would say my TV time averages out to an hour a day. In baseball season, I watch more games, and I usually have a game on while I'm doing other things. In the winter, not as much, but over a year, I think my TV habits average out to about an hour a day. It's Thursday, so we have a song of the week. It was supposed to be last week's song, but I preempted JR last week. So it's this week, and this is a good one. I had never heard of this one until today. The song is Growing Up by the band Run River North. Run River North is a Korean-American band based in Los Angeles. Their music is indie rock. I really like the song Growing Up. It's about taking advantage of the time you have and having the courage to be happy and go after your own happiness. Good job, JR. This is a good song, Growing Up by Run River North. That's it for today. Thanks for joining us for episode 231. If you have kids, remember, if the fever is 99.5, let them stay home. That's 2 degrees above normal now. Don't forget, we'll be right back here on Monday. And also, don't forget the listener survey. It's going to help us. It's going to help you because we'll only get better because you give your opinion. But it's also a great way to practice your reading and writing. So it's a win-win. PlainEnglish.com/survey, SURVEY, and it should only take a few minutes. Once more, I'd appreciate your feedback at PlainEnglish.com/survey. Have a great weekend.